Well, hey everybody, we're going to be engaging with a video that is about questions around having kids and do people want to have kids? So it's sort of man on the street or mostly woman on the street style. We'll look at it and we'll talk a little bit about it.
I'm out here today and the question I'm asking is, do you want kids?
Oh, I don't know. That's a lot of money that I wouldn't be spending on myself.
I don't think I'm equipped to raise a child through all the, that things I can hardly deal with myself.
I like to go out a lot. I can only take care of one person.
I'm a musician, and so it's really hard for me to even think about caring for others at this time.
Do you eventually want to have kids at some age?
Maybe if someone else is paying for the kids.
All right, so I think it is striking right away, it's just some of the responses, and there will be some different ones later, but the idea that the motivation, the reason for not wanting to have kids is because of just the very surface reality that you have somebody that you're responsible for and that you have somebody to care for. The fact that with one of the gals, she's basically saying, I want to spend money on myself. And the fact that another one is saying, I don't know that I'm equipped to raise a child. For most societies, if you were an adult and you were not equipped to raise a child, you're not very useful. And so it's strange that we've gotten to the point that it's like, this is maybe just something that some segment of the population is especially gifted for or prone to, instead of thinking this is part of adulthood. And certainly we know not every adult is going to end up having kids and raising kids, but the vast majority are. And for those who aren't, they should still be in a position where they're equipped to be able to pass along some basic child raising to the next generation. And it's also striking how selfishness in our culture, not just on this subject, but on many subjects, has become now a palatable excuse for what we do, that it's sort of taken for granted. Well, yeah, I'm selfish, and so I probably shouldn't have kids. And instead of the next step being, I'm selfish and that's not good, and I need to put that to death, and I need to work on that because I'm going to be just a very self-absorbed person if I don't. Then instead, we're just like, oh, I get it. Yeah, you're selfish, so it's probably better that you don't have kids. It's probably better that you recognize that you're selfish instead of actually working on your selfishness and becoming less self-absorbed.
But it's your kid.
I need to do some healing before I impart any of those things I've gone through on another little human. It's not that I don't want kids. I'm a 39-year-old woman, and at this point in my life, there's just still work I need to do, and it's just not really
probably too late.
Do you feel
probably too late for her to have biological kids? Maybe not, because we can do a lot of amazing things right now. But getting to that point and saying there's still stuff to work on. There's always stuff to work on. Maybe she has some really profound things to work on. But when you get to this point, and this is something where a lot of people, and in particular a lot of women, deal with deep regret for waiting so long, because as men, we can still be part of having kids much later in life. But for women, if you're going to have biological kids, there's just a smaller window in which that's possible. And so I think because of our society continuing to push off marriage and push off child raising, sort of like do all the things that you want to do before you enter into that, we end up having a lot of people, and a lot of women in particular, regretting decisions and dealing with a deep sadness that this window that's not tiny but is not massive was lost because they were told kids are going to get in the way of doing what's really going to make your life joyful and worth living.
Do you feel more free not having kids?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can travel whenever I want. I can spend my money all on me.
In my early 20s, I wanted kids really badly, but that was before I started having so much fun.
Do you want kids?
I think it's very selfish. Looking at the world and how it is right now, global warming and all that kind of stuff, I am not sure if I want this environment to my kids.
The climate, climate change and everything, that has obviously gotten worse over our generation. So the problems we're facing nowadays aren't really the same that people were facing decades ago.
So everything was cheaper back then. You could get a house for much cheaper. Everything was just more affordable. But also I feel like a lot of people in this generation are trying to be successful on their own and creating these startups, which you really don't have time to take care of a baby.
All right, so what the pink-haired gal was saying is definitely true, that there's truth to it, that but especially in Southern California, where I am when I'm recording this, it is more difficult. I feel for people that are starting off now and trying to just be autonomous as adults, and then to think about having kids and the extra expenses that goes along with that. It is, no doubt, it is tougher now. And some of that, it's hard to determine how much of that is that there are things that used to not be assumed base level sort of needs in our society that now we consider base level needs. And so some of that might be our own fault for saying, well, in order to be stable, I need to have these other things that we don't technically need to have. but also things just are much more expensive. So that's tough. The environmental stuff that they were saying, what I'd say is, well, first of all, I disagree with it. But also I disagree that that's even a factor for them. For most of the gals who were saying that, they had already said, I'm kind of selfish, I don't want kids. And then you're like, oh yeah, and also justice and environment, and I want to take it. I just think for most people, that's just a very convenient excuse. There might be some that do really think that and do have an idealism surrounding, like, no, it's irresponsible to have a lot of kids. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that has been borne out as the population has increased. There's been more innovation, and there's been more ways that people have been able to solve problems. And there have been things that have been a lot better. It's not that it would be impossible to get to a point that overpopulation is an issue, but I see it as a red herring. I think to be clear on this, I think that this is a lie from the enemy, because he hates God. He hates God's image. Human beings are created in God's image. More image bearers on the earth is, in my opinion, never going to be a bad thing. And I don't think that we're close to the idea of overpopulation or environmental issues being the kind of problem that wouldn't be helped by having more human beings around who are going to have that image-bearing sense and are going to find solutions to problems that we haven't found solutions to yet.
People are realizing, like, I have a future to have before I even have a family. I'm saving till I actually finish my goal, and then I'll have kids after that. Be able to be financially stable enough to where my family is not suffering.
Do you think people look down on being a mom today? The reason why I asked this is because you even prefaced this saying that you want to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, that's like a bad thing.
To be a stay-at-home mom, like, you have to have money. Unless your one partner is able to pull for the both of you and your family, like, you cannot be a stay-at-home mom.
I think a lot of people like glamorize motherhood, but then I think a lot of people have started dissing people who are mothers or who embrace motherhood. I don't know, I've been seeing like a lot of TikToks of people who, once they have children, it causes like stress in the marriage.
I don't know if you are on TikTok, but there's a whole thing with like the girl with like the list of like reasons why you should not have kids.
And this TikTok list by Unique Thoughts is a compilation of over 350 reasons to never have a child. She compiles TikToks from various accounts and adds them to her list of reasons, ranging from baby parasite to uterine trauma. And based on its engagements, the videos have become pretty popular. But it does make you think, does it reflect the popular trend nowadays to bash pregnancies and to encourage women to reject motherhood?
I've also seen like...
So this honestly just makes me want to cry. This just makes me so sad. There are, of course, reasons not to have kids. And there are, of course, reasons why having kids makes your life more difficult than before you have kids. Everybody knows it. It's self-evident that that's a reality. Although it is interesting because in some societies, still some societies around today, but less in sort of the West, having more kids was actually a financial benefit, because if you're a woman, especially, if your husband died, you'd have kids that would actually take care of you. And even if you were a man, eventually you wouldn't be able to work like you did before, and so you'd have kids who could take care of you. But also, if you were working on a farm, you have 5 or 6 kids. First of all, a lot of them are going to die young in other cultures, but you're having more kids, and they're going to be able to help make the family prosperous. But just all that to say, of course, there's reasons not to have kids. And of course, there are reasons why having kids makes your marriage even more complicated. It does bring in stress points, because even if you're largely aligned, you're going to disagree with some of the parenting decisions that you're going to make, and you're going to be tired, and you're both going to feel like you're doing more than than pulling your own weight. And so the wife's going to be like, you don't do enough. And the husband's going to be like, you kidding me? I do way more than all my friends. And there's going to be that push and pull. But ultimately, marriage is also bonded deeply by having kids together. Having kids bonds a marriage together in a way that it's hard to bond if you don't have kids, for whatever reason that you don't have kids, because you have such a partnership together in that, and you also have this constant reminder that your marriage is building into something that's bigger than yourselves. It's not that the marriage is suddenly about the kids, but having kids is a sign of hope and is a sign of engagement in the future, and in the idea that we're about something better. We want to actually leave the world better than we found it. We want our kids to do better than we did. We want the church to be richer than it was before, because we've raised children who love Jesus and serve the church. So It's easy to find reasons not to have kids. It's easy to find reasons not to do anything. That's easy to find reasons not to exercise or not to eat well or not to save money or not to do any of these things that are worth doing. It's not hard to come up with 200 or 350 reasons, but how sad that this would be a focal point and how sad that people would miss out on something not only so beautiful for them, but so tied into bigger purpose because there's this list of 350 reasons not to have kids.
I've also seen like a lot of people in like the public space that choose to not have kids. So it's kind of like I have a role model of women who don't want the same outcome of their life that has just been kind of just like a generational thing.
We learn a lot of things nowadays based off like social media, what people will decide to share.
Having children isn't always like the best option for everyone, and I think people are just starting to realize that.
It may be technically true that having children is not the best option for everyone. It is not something, and even if you're married, there's not, I don't believe be fruitful and multiply as a command that every married couple must have kids and must have multiple kids and as many kids as they want. Having this idea that it's like, all right, some married couples should have kids and some shouldn't. And some people should look at this as a good thing that you're uniquely suited for, but other people just aren't suited for it. It is, I think, equivalent to saying some people who age-wise are adults should act like adults and some shouldn't. Because it's not that parenting is synonymous with being an adult, but the avoidance of responsibility, which parenting is just through generations, it's a common responsibility through being an adult. Avoidance of that because you don't want the responsibility, because they have other things that you're wanting to make your life about, is very sad. And for us as believers in Jesus, this is, I think, significant, not just because we're looking to take responsibility and be mature and grow in general maturity, but also because we want to make disciples of all nations. And we want the next generation to have people making disciples of that nation. And so the more kids that we as believers have, it's not that every single one of them is going to put their faith in Jesus, but we're looking with hope to the future, and we're even looking at that as part of our role in raising up a new generation who will love Jesus and who will share the gospel with their friends. It's a video that makes me sad. There is hope that this is not the full population here. There is hope, but we also should realize, for those of us who are raising kids, this is some of the stuff that they're dealing with, and this is some of the stuff that's being normalized for people in their teens, 20s, and 30s right now. And so we as Christian parents and we as disciplers and youth leaders and pastors and whoever we are, we need to be actively talking about God's good calling for us within family, even though it's not going to be God's calling for everyone, so that we're saying something, so that we're giving a different and a beautiful alternative to what the world is offering to people.